A.3.6. What is cultural anarchism? For our purposes, we will define cultural anarchism as the promotion of anti-authoritarian values through those aspects of society traditionally regarded as belonging to the sphere of culture rather than economics or politics. For example, through art, music, drama, literature, education, child-rearing practices, sexual morality, technology, and so forth. Cultural expressions are anarchistic to the extent that they deliberately attack, weaken, or subvert the tendency of most traditional cultural forms to promote authoritarian values and attitudes, particularly domination and exploitation. Thus, a novel that portrays the evils of militarism can be considered as cultural anarchism if it goes beyond the simple war is hell model and allows the reader to see how militarism is connected with authoritarian institutions, for example, capitalism and statism, or methods of authoritarian conditioning, for example, upbringing in the traditional patriarchal family. Or, as John Clark expresses it, cultural anarchism implies, open quote, the development of arts, media, and other symbolic forms that expose various aspects of the system of domination and contrast them with a system of values based on freedom and community. This cultural struggle would be part of a general struggle to combat the material and ideological power of all dominating classes, whether economic, political, racial, religious, or sexual, with a multidimensional practice of liberation. In other words, an expanded conception of class analysis and an amplified practice of class struggle, which includes but is not limited to economic actions like strikes, boycotts, job actions, occupation, organizations of direct action groups and federations of libertarian workers groups, and development of workers' assemblies, collectives, and cooperatives, and political activity like the active interference with implementation of repressive governmental policies, the noncompliance and resistance against regimentation and bureaucratization of society, and participation in movements for increasing direct participation in decision-making and local control." End quote. Cultural anarchism is important, indeed essential, because authoritarian values are embedded in a total system of domination with many aspects beside the political and economic. Hence, those values cannot be eradicated even by a combined economic and political revolution if it is not also accompanied by profound psychological changes in the majority of the population. For mass acquiescence in the current system is rooted in the psychic structure of human beings, their character structure, to use Wilhelm Reich's expression, which is produced by many forms of conditioning and socialization that have developed with patriarchal authoritarian civilization during the past 5,000 or 6,000 years. In other words, even if capitalism and the state were overthrown tomorrow, people would soon create new forms of authority in their place. For authority, a strong leader, a chain of command, someone to give orders and relieve one of the responsibility of thinking for oneself, are what the submissive/authoritarian personality feels most comfortable with. Unfortunately, the majority of human beings fear real freedom and, indeed, do not know what to do with it, as is shown by a long string of failed revolutions and freedom movements in which the revolutionary ideals of freedom, democracy, and equality were betrayed, and a new hierarchy and ruling class were quickly created. These failures are generally attributed to the machinations of reactionary politicians and capitalists and to the perfidy of revolutionary leaders. But reactionary politicians only attract followers because they find a favorable soil for the growth of their authoritarian ideals in the character structure of ordinary people. Hence, the prerequisite of an anarchist revolution is a period of consciousness raising, in which people gradually become aware of submissive/authoritarian traits within themselves, see how those traits are reproduced by conditioning, and understand how they can be mitigated or eliminated through new forms of culture, particularly new child-rearing and educational methods. We will explore this issue more fully in section B.1.5, What is the Mass Psychological Basis for Authoritarian Civilization, J.6, what methods of child rearing do anarchists advocate, and J.5.13, what are modern schools? Cultural anarchist ideas are shared by almost all schools of anarchist thought, and consciousness raising is considered an essential part of any anarchist movement. For anarchists, it's important to build the new world in the shell of the old in all aspects of our lives, and creating an anarchist culture is part of that activity. Few anarchists, however, consider consciousness raising as enough in itself, and so combine cultural anarchist activities with organizing, using direct action, and building libertarian alternatives in capitalist society. The anarchist movement is one that combines practical self-activity with cultural work, with both activities feeding into and supporting the other.